On January the 6th, 2021, the world woke up or went to bed watching the US Capitol building stormed by a group of individuals who, for various reasons, wished to overturn the result of the 2020 election. This image circulated around the world, and many people, the focus was the flag. The flag that you can see there is the Army of Northern Virginia battle flag. Today, many people refer to it as the Confederate flag. It was never the national flag of the Confederacy. It's Robert Lee's Army of Northern Virginia battle flag. Anyway, while the world was looking at that, historians were looking at the finer details in the picture. To your left, you can see someone particularly important to our course in the early stages. That is John C. Calhoun, a fervent defender of Southern rights, particularly that of slavery. However, the other person in the photograph is someone that we haven't studied yet, and it's the focus of today's video, and that's this gentleman here. That's Charles Sumner, a very different politician to John C. Calhoun. And there is quite the irony that in this picture, it is these men, two important individuals in our course, that overlook the events of the 6th of January 2021. But first we need to go back to May 1856. On the 22nd of May 1856, Senator for Massachusetts, Charles Sumner, was brutally beaten by a member of the House of Representatives, a man by the name of Preston Brooks. Sumner had given a speech entitled "The Crimes Against Kansas," in which he lay the blame at the door of two of his fellow senators. The first was Stephen Douglas, and the other was Senator Butler from Carolina. Sumner was beaten until he was unconscious. The cane that was used to beat him was shattered into very many pieces. And though Sumner remains a senator both during and after the Civil War, the psychological effects of the beating mean that he is reluctant to return to physically be in Congress. In the background, we can see Southern senators enjoying what is happening. Sumner being ripped from his chair and beaten to a bloody pulp. However, this didn't happen. There was an intervention eventually, and Brooks was pulled away from Sumner. This northern cartoon, mocking Southern chivalry, is inaccurate, because members of the Senate were roundly as shocked as we would be upon hearing of this story. And so it doesn't show precisely what happened. It's got the key detail of Brooks beating Sumner, but the onlookers laughing and not doing anything about it. And you can even see here on the left-hand side a Southern member of the Senate blocking someone from stopping the beating from happening. The details in the background, that's where the inaccuracies are. This event became known as Bleeding Sumner, and for many Northerners, it was a cause of outrage far greater than events in Kansas. Let's have a look at why Sumner ended up in this position. And there is Sumner in an official portrait. Now, I said that he gave a speech. It was referred to as Crimes Against Kansas. And his speech was basically blaming certain politicians for events in Kansas. And like I said, it's two Democrats that come in for particular criticism. The first, of course, Stephen Douglas of Illinois, the man behind the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Sumner refers to Douglas as noisome, squat, and not a proper model for an American senator. Scathing words. However, he isn't finished there, and his most offensive tirade comes against his fellow senator from South Carolina, Senator Butler. He decides in his speech to mock Butler's apparent Southern chivalry. Now, immediately, that is an affront to Southern honour. But he says that he has taken on a mistress, and though ugly to others, she is beautiful to him. And though polluted in the eyes of the world, appears chaste to him. And he ends with, and by that I mean, the harlot slavery. He is making a very deliberate metaphor there, making it sound like a love affair. And again, it's an attempt to mock his chivalry and Southern honour. So he says that he has taken on a mistress, ugly to the world, but beautiful to him, and that is slavery. Now, Senator Butler isn't there to defend himself. He's in absentia. He isn't present on the Congress floor. But a close family member of his is there, and that is member of the House of Representatives, Preston Brooks. Now, according to Southern codes of honour, if somebody's honour has been decried or allegations have been made, they are challenged to a duel. In Preston Brooks's eyes, Sumner doesn't warrant that. He hasn't behaved in a gentlemanly manner, and he must be treated in the way that an unruly dog would be treated, and that is to be beaten. And so this is why the cartoon is inaccurate. At the end of the session, Charles Sumner is sat at his Senate desk, and he is signing off copies of the Crime Against Kansas speech for it to be sent to newspapers and the like. Brooks appears from behind and hits him on the head with his cane, and continues to do so as Sumner tries to scramble away. The Senate floor is in shock at what is happening. Sumner is eventually carried away when Brooks's cane is shattered. Brooks calmly walks out from the Senate floor, and the people there are said to be in shock, and that is why he wasn't apprehended. But he calmly walks off the Senate floor. For his behaviour, Preston Brooks is censured by the House of Representatives. That is basically when the fellow members of the House decide whether or not that Brooks's presence in the House can be justified in light of what has happened. He survives the vote. However, he resigns from his post in July of 1856, and that means that a special election must be held in the state of South Carolina from which he hails. Guess who wins re-election in that special election? Preston Brooks. Brooks is referred to as a Southern hero, a defender of Southern honour against these ignorant Yankees. Many supporters send him replacement canes. There are reports that he was inundated with deliveries for a replacement cane. And people began to walk around with pieces of said cane hanging from their neck like a necklace. Now, with all things, with all shrines and artefacts, sometimes from a religious standpoint, the whether it was the real deal or not is to be debated. But the very fact that people wore this symbol on their neck showed their support for Brooks. Brooks was a Southern hero who defended the South's honour. He returned to Congress after his re-election. It's not long after his return to Congress that Brooks dies unexpectedly, aged 37 in January of 1857. He suffered from croup, and reports from a doctor said he died a horrid death and suffered intensely. He endeavoured to tear his own throat open to get breath. And despite the awful January weather, thousands attended a memorial service at the nation's capital. And when his body was returned to Edgefield, South Carolina, the place of his birth, thousands also attended his funeral. And similarly to Brooks, Sumner became a Northern hero. As I've suggested, he was beaten so badly, he didn't return to the Senate for another 3 years. Eventually, when he physically and psychologically recovers from the attack, he does return. In 1856, he's up for re-election in the state of Massachusetts. But the state legislature, decided that he would keep his seat and that they would keep his seat vacant during his absence as a reminder of the brutal attack that he suffered. So just prior to the Civil War, he returns to the Senate. And actually, Brooks becomes one of the staunchest radical Republicans after the Civil War. He isn't happy with the plans put forward by Presidents Lincoln and then later President Johnson for a post-war settlement. And he becomes one of the most radical of reformers after the Civil War. So, whereas Brooks becomes a Southern hero and defender of Southern honour, Charles Sumner becomes a martyr for the Northern cause against the brutality of Southerners. And for many Northerners, this was slave power at work. They deny free speech and they are willing to use violence to get what they want. For Northerners are horrified by this attack, but not surprised. And so we have American society in a nutshell here. We have a portion of society willing to use violence to achieve their political means, whereas Sumner, on the other hand, was willing to offend anyone and everyone that he felt was deserving of it. This event shows the division of American society, but the reaction of both northern and southern communities shows how divided America had become at that stage. And so, for many northerners in particular, the attack on Sumner is more of a reason to fear the South and the slave power conspiracy than the events in Kansas, particularly white northerners. They are less concerned with the status of Kansas in the short term than they are of what has happened on the Senate floor to Charles Sumner. And one more thing to remember, prior to the 1856 election, this happened in the summer, in May, and the elections were due in the fall, in November. And so this is one of the key issues going into the 1856 presidential election campaign.